Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. Layla Farrow, a chronicler of arcane landmarks, arrived in Thornhaven under a silvered sky. For months she had pored over faded maps and half-burned manuscripts describing the Arch, a fleeting portal between worlds, beckoning those seeking knowledge or redemption. When an elderly lighthouse keeper confirmed the legend under his breath, "It opens tonight, child, if the moon is right," Layla's pulse quickened. She climbed the cliffside path at dusk, guided by the moon's first pale glow. At the summit, the silver arch rose against the stars, twin pillars carved with lunar phases and entwined roses, a keystone in the shape of a crescent. A chill wind rustled her cloak as she approached. Below, the sea's surge beat a funeral drum. Layla set down her pack, unpacked her journals, and waited. As midnight neared, the moon ascended into full bloom. Its light struck the arch's marble and set it aglow. The air hummed. Layla watched the keystone tremble. Then, with a sound like sighing silk, the gate swung inward, revealing an obsidian road flecked with luminous dust. Heart pounding, Layla stepped through. At once, the sea's roar fell away, replaced by an eerie hush. The road stretched into a forest of silver-barked trees, their leaves shimmering like mother-of-pearl. A pale mist curled around her ankles, fragrant with night-blooming jasmine. Clutching her lantern, Layla ventured forward. She sought the citadel of starlight said to lie at the trail's end, and answers to questions no mortal dared ask. The trees whispered as she passed, their voices like distant lullabies. Moon moths brushed her cheeks with wings of spun frost. Layla paused to record her observations. The way the mist refracted her lantern's beam, the scent of old magic on the breeze. Suddenly, a figure stepped from behind a tree. A tall woman in robes of pale velvet, silver hair crowned with a circlet of entwined roses. Woman: Layla Farrow, chronicler of secrets. Welcome. Layla's mouth went dry. Who? What are you? Woman: I am the moon's warden, keeper of the gate's promise. You seek knowledge, yet knowledge demands sacrifice. The moon's warden beckoned deeper into the forest. Layla followed, aware at each step that the trees tracked her progress, their leaves softly clapping in the hush. They reached a clearing where a still, moonlit lake lay. Its surface was mirror smooth. The warden paused, her reflection on the water rippling before the lake itself moved. Warden, here your deepest memory will be shown. Only by confronting it may you proceed. Layla took a trembling breath. She knelt and peered in, and saw herself as a child, weeping beside her mother's empty cradle, the memory she had buried to do her work. Tears blurred her sight. Layla: I forgot her. The warden extended a hand. Acknowledge what you have lost. Layla whispered her mother's name. The lake's surface glowed, waves rippled, and the memory dissolved in light. Warden: then shall the path open. Underfoot, the obsidian road shimmered and extended across the lake on a bridge of fallen starlight. The road led to vast gates of crystal, each panel etched with constellations unknown to earthly skies. Beyond lay the citadel, halls of pale blue marble, archways shimmering with distant galaxies. At its center stood an altar of pure moonstone, atop which rested an open book of silver ink. Layla approached, heart pounding. The pages turned of their own accord, revealing prophecies of worlds born and destroyed, visions of her own future intertwined with cosmic fate. Voice from the book: Reader, your story now becomes part of ours. Choose: embrace the knowledge and remain, or close the book and return forever changed. Layla hesitated. She longed to read on, to unravel the universe's grand design. But she remembered the cost, the warden's warning, the Sorrow Lake's trial, and her mother's empty cradle. With a trembling hand, Layla closed the book. The gates of crystal dissolved into starlight mist. She retraced her steps across the Moonstone Bridge, past the lake that no longer showed sorrow, through the forest of whispering trees, now hushed in moonlight's grace. At the arch, the gates swung outward as dawn's first pale rays colored the horizon. Layla stepped back into Thornhaven's chill air, her lantern dimmed, but her heart bright with hard-won truth. Layla sealed the silver arch behind her with runes of calm, ensuring it opened only when a seeker had faced their inner night. She returned to her scholarly life, her journals richer for the journey, her spirit forever touched by realms beyond waking. In the years that followed, she guided a careful few to the arch on full moon nights, pilgrims seeking closure, redemption, or wisdom. Each who passed through returned drained but enlightened, bearing silver-inked pages from the Citadel's tome. And when the moon rose full above Thornhaven's cliffs, those who paused by the arch could still hear, on the wind, the faintest echo. You have gazed beyond the veil. Choose wisely the path of tomorrow. Thus the moonlit archway remained, a timeless threshold where dreams and destiny converged beneath the crown of the full moon, and where each traveler found that some gates open only when the heart is ready to walk beyond. Dr. Fairchild's carriage climbed the winding lane as dusk deepened into violet shadow. At the gates, two figures in mourning dress, silent and pale, opened with a creak that echoed through the trees. Inside the courtyard, a string quartet played a somber waltz, their faces still in darkness. Jocelyn was greeted by the steward, Mr. Hawthorne, whose polite smile did not reach his hollow eyes. Hawthorne: "Welcome, Doctor. Dinner awaits at 7, and your chambers at 8, when the dreaming begins." Thanks murmured, Jocelyn passed through the grand hall. Marble floors veined with azure, oil paintings whose subjects' eyes seemed to flicker, and a grand staircase that spiraled like the inside of a conch shell. Above, a fresco of sleep and death dancing under a silver moon. In the ballroom beyond, masked guests murmured behind gilded fans. Jocelyn took her seat at the long table, each place laid with silver forks and crystal goblets. But as she sipped her sparkling wine, she felt the crystal's edge scrape her palm, leaving a line of blood too fine to see by lamplight. At 8 o'clock, Hawthorne escorted Jocelyn to her suite, the West Wing's moonlit chamber. Its walls were draped in midnight blue velvet, the ceiling painted with spinning constellations. On the four-poster bed lay a silk mask embroidered with silver threads. Wear this to enter the dream. Hawthorne bowed and vanished. Jocelyn examined the mask's edge. On the silk, a fine stitch spelled a warning in Lady Ashcroft's cipher. Beware the waking of desire. Determined, Jocelyn donned the mask and lay upon the bed. Her mind drifted into velvet night. She found herself in a mirrored hallway, each mirror reflecting an image of her most treasured memory. Her first day at medical school, her mother's embrace, the moment she published her first paper. Soft music beckoned, a lullaby of cello and flute. Jocelyn moved toward the sound, drawn by sweetness unbound. But as she passed each mirror, the reflections darkened. Her mother's eyes hollowed, her success turned to ashes. The hallway stretched infinitely, and behind, the lullaby warped into the screech of fingernails on glass. Jocelyn broke into a run, but the mirrors multiplied, trapping her in a labyrinth of broken hopes. Jocelyn bolted awake to find herself in her chamber, but the mask remained pressed against her face, its silver threads cold as frost. Outside, the storm she had not noticed was raging. Wind rattled shutters, thunder shook the rafters. She tore at the mask, ripping it free and dropping it to the floor, where it writhed like a living thing and dissolved into dark mist. She rushed downstairs, heart hammering, only to see guests wandering the halls, eyes vacant, lips murmuring hymns to dreams undone. They wore tattered masks of their own, echoes of silk and silver. Hawthorne stood by the grand staircase, guiding them with a gentle touch. Hawthorne, the dream has commenced anew. Please join us. Jocelyn fled into the stormy night. Determined to end the nightmare, Jocelyn returned in daylight and forced entry into the manor's depths. Behind the grand ballroom lay a hidden door leading to Lady Ashcroft's private study. There she found journals bound in sable leather and stained with tears. Lady Ashcroft had discovered the dream mask centuries ago, a relic of myth, and used it to bind her guests in perpetual reverie so she might absorb their desires to sustain her own immortality. Jocelyn's blood ran cold as she read the final entry. Tonight I shall sleep and dream of deathless grace. My guests shall never wake, and I shall reign eternal. A single page fluttered free, inked with a counter ritual. Let the light of truth burn colder than desire and break the spell of dream. That evening, Jocelyn stormed the ballroom, confronting Holt Hawthorne as the masked guests swayed in a trance. She brandished the manual lantern she carried and recited the ritual's verses. Hawthorne lunged, but the guests recoiled as her words echoed against the frescoed ceiling. The storm outside reached a crescendo. As she spoke the final line, lightning struck the tower's weather vane, shattering glass across the ballroom. The masks shrieked and dissolved, ripping free their wearers from slumber. The guests fell, trembling, as consciousness returned. In the lantern's glow, Jocelyn faced Hawthorne, whose face, once pale and composed, twisted in fury. She raised her voice. Jocelyn, by dawn's first light, your dream shall end. With a howl, Hawthorne collapsed into dust. The storm broke, and at dawn's edge, Nocturne Manor's windows lay empty, its guests free and unmasked, though haunted by visions they could never unsee. Nocturne Manor stood silent once more. Jocelyn sealed Lady Ashcroft's journals and the shattered mass fragments in the ruined study's safe, bearing the key beneath the roots of a white rose outside the front gate. She returned to her practice, her eyes forever alert to the line between dream and nightmare. At dusk, locals reported a lantern's glow in the empty windows, yet no one dared investigate. The manor slept, its debts to dreams paid in tears. And for all time, the villagers would remember that some houses feed on your sweetest hopes, turning them, at midnight's hour, into your darkest fears. In the village of Ashwell, Emmeline's world collapsed the night Tristan returned late, eyes wide with dread. Tristan, I've found it. The backward way. I'll use it to turn back time and save Mother. At dawn, he slipped away with only his battered walking staff. Emmeline discovered his note pinned to the hearth. If I fail, do not follow. She ignored his warning. Gathering supplies, dried venison, oil lantern, Tristan's pocket watch, she set out for Grafin Marsh at sunrise. By midday, Emmeline crossed the marsh's threshold beneath a granite arch carved with counterclockwise spirals. A sign read simply, "The Backward Way." She glanced at her pocket watch, noon, but the sun clung at 11 o'clock sharp. Swallowing fear, she stepped onto the cobbles. Immediately, the air hummed. Birds in the reeds flew backward. Ripples in the marsh water flowed toward the source. Emmeline's leather satchel, packed this morning, unrolled fruit and utensils onto the road. She knelt to repack it, watching time itself recoil. As Emmeline walked, each sunrise she passed slipped into yesterday's dawn. At first, she delighted as village memories reversed. A child unlearned to walk, a baker's fresh loaves uncooked themselves. But soon her own memories retreated. Tristan's laughter became fainter. Her mother's smile faded into worry, and Emmeline's own name felt like a secret. Still, she pressed on, eyes fixed on the marsh's edge where Tristan's steps should await. Lantern light crept forward before dusk, guiding her along reversed shadows. At the half-mile stone, its inscription reading, "Here time turns," Emmeline found a mossy well. Tristan's staff leaned against its rim, watch closed upon the ledge. She peered into the well's depths. Water swirled upward, carrying echoes of sobbing voices from days before. Above, Tristan's voice called out from behind her, though she had not heard him pass. She turned to see him walking backwards toward her, face drawn with exhaustion. Emmeline. "Tristan!" He smiled sadly, tears retreating along his cheeks. "You shouldn't have come, Emmeline. I had to." "Mother," he shook his head. "The road undoes what it touches. You'll vanish next." Emmeline grasped Tristan's hand. "We'll end this together." She raised his staff and swung it at the mile marker. The stone cracked, and time's reversed flow stuttered. The air shook as if caught in a violent pulse. Tristan's eyes widened. "Stop!" But Emmeline plunged the staff into the inscription center. Light flared. The backward current halted. The world locked in stillness. Marsh, birds, ripples, lantern flame, suspended as though held by unseen hand. When the world resumed, time flowed forward. The pocket watch ticked true. The sun climbed skyward, and the marsh's waters rippled normally. Emmeline collapsed beside Tristan's staff, heart hammering. Their memories returned in sharp clarity. Mother's laughter, Tristan's kindness, Emmeline's own name and purpose. They embraced amid the broken marker, tears of relief mingling with marsh mist. Emmeline and Tristan buried the milestone's fragments deep in the marsh. They returned to Ashwell at dawn, older, wiser, united. Emmeline nursed their mother back to health. Tristan took up his staff anew, guiding lost travelers safely along true roads. The backward way remained, but its mile marker lies hidden, its spirals shattered. And on moonless nights, when the mist drifts low over Grafin Marsh, villagers whisper of a broken path where time once reversed, and of two brave souls who turned back the tide of yesterday to live in tomorrow's grace. Aurelia Thorne was born beneath the beacon's beam. As the appointed keeper's daughter, she grew accustomed to the lantern's hum and the smell of burning fish oil at dusk. Her father, Jareth Thorne, tended the lens with ritual precision, polishing its prisms until the light shone like congealed dawn. Yet Aurelia sensed a sorrow in the beam, an echo of realms unseen. On her 18th birthday, Jareth fell ill. The townsfolk of Greyhaven spoke of cursed light. "The beacon stirs what slumbers," they whispered. Aurelia watched her father's strength wane as the light grew ever brighter each night. Desperate, she vowed to uncover the truth behind the beacon's power before it consumed them all. Aurelia descended every night into the lantern room, where prisms spun like crystal galaxies. She studied her father's journals, entries of storms weathered, phantom ships sighted, and one notation scrawled in trembling ink. Tonight the beam found the shattered city. Its lanterns answered beyond the veil. That night, Aurelia watched through the ocular lens as the beacon's beam pierced the fog. Beyond the cove's cliffs, she saw a ruined spire carved from pale stone, crowned by floating lanterns like captive moons. Shadows moved among its arches, figures clad in tattered finery, their faces turned upward. Aurelia sketched the vision, unaware that the light had searched her soul as well. When dawn broke, she awoke drenched in cold sweat, the sketch trembling in her hand. She realized the beacon did not only illuminate distant places, but shone into her heart's hidden depths, revealing desires and regrets she had never voiced. Fearing her father's fate, Aurelia summoned the village council in the old boathouse. She presented her sketch and her father's journals. "Mayor Fenwick, legends speak of the beacon's power, but never of its cost." Old Mariner Holt, We owe our lives to its light. Lost ships find their harbor, yet many have vanished after glimpsing those ruinous spires. Aurelia pleaded for guidance. The council decreed a pilgrimage to the base of the beacon. They would ascend and extinguish the lantern if its power proved malevolent. But that night the beacon flared with unnatural brilliance, so bright it banished the stars. Aurelia awoke to her father's anguished cry and found him staring into the lens, eyes wide with something like recognition and despair. Determined to save her father, Aurelia ascended the spiral stairs alone just before midnight. The chamber pulsed with heat and light. At the heart of the lantern, she found not fire, but a crystalline prism, a vessel of trapped vision. Whispered echoes filled the room, voices from beyond time, entreating her to look deeper. Aurelia peered through the backlit prism. The world dissolved into torrents of color, worlds collapsing into each other, impossible landscapes of floating islands, skeletal forests, and cities flickering in and out of existence. From that seething kaleidoscope, hands reached for her, silent, begging figures whose faces shimmered, then vanished. She stumbled back, heart pounding. The prism cracked under her gaze. The lantern's hum deepened into a roar. Below, Greyhaven trembled. Torrents of light poured from the beacon's windows, forming spectral archways along the cliffs. The villagers gathered with torches as the beacon's beam carved doorways into the night sky, portals opening into forgotten realms. From each portal poured mist and memory, a wave of lost sailors, a host of children laughing in sepia fields, a grand orchestra playing a waltz no living ear had heard. The portals pulsed in time with Aurelia's racing heartbeat. On the cliff's edge, Jareth emerged, drawn by the beacon's call. He collapsed beside Aurelia, whispering, "I saw her, Ileana, the Sea King's daughter. She sang to me." His eyes were empty with wonder and terror. Aurelia realized the beacon's light was Ileana's lament, the sorrow of a princess whose love had drowned, woven into crystal to call the living to her broken shores. To end the beacon's thrall, Aurelia must heal that ancient grief. Guided by her father's half-remembered song, Aurelia climbed back to the lantern chamber. She found the prism's fragment on the ground, glowing with azure fire. She pressed it to her lips and sang a melody of forgiveness, words of hope learned from her mother's lullabies. The chamber pulsed, the portals flickered and then closed one by one. The lantern's beam dimmed to a pale, steady glow. Greyhaven exhaled as dawn broke, and the spectral archways faded like mist. Jareth knelt before her, tears in his eyes. "You have woven hope into the light." Aurelia became the beacon's keeper. She restored the lantern's prism, forging it anew with love's accord rather than grief's lament. Now the beacon's beam still shines each night, but only in pale gold, gentle as candlelight. It guides ships home, but does not pry into realms beyond. Yet in the heart of the lighthouse, Aurelia keeps the original prism fragment, no longer a shard of sorrow, but a reminder that forgotten realms need not haunt the living, but can inspire hearts bold enough to shine hope into every dark horizon. And on moonlit nights, when the sea glistens like glass, Greyhaven's people still see a distant gleam beyond their world, and smile, knowing it no longer calls them away, but reminds them of the boundless possibility that lies just beyond the edge of sight. Marcus Calloway was 16 summers old when he arrived at Aylwin Cove, apprenticed to old Brynner, the village harpmaker. Marcus's hands were steady, his ear keen, but his heart longed for more than crafting dulcimers and psalteries in quiet days. He yearned to hear the storm harp's fabled music with his own ears. On his first night in Brynner's workshop, the old harpmaker set a single task: finish the tuning of a modest lap harp. Marcus toiled by candlelight, knotting pegs and adjusting tension until dawn's gray light seeped through the window. Exhausted, he fell asleep and dreamed of storm-lashed cliffs and the pale harp glowing in rain. When he awoke, Brenner stood over him with a gravely smile. "A storm's brewing tonight," he rumbled. "Tonight, you must prove yourself. Follow the cove path, listen for the harp, and bring me back its song." That afternoon, an uneasy wind rose from the sea. Fishermen hurried their nets, and lanterns swung in windows as ferry boats tied their lines. Marcus slung a cloak over his shoulders and followed the winding cliff-top path past sea-spray bleached stones. The sky darkened to gunmetal. Gulls cried in panicked roosts. At the cove's mouth, waves pounded the jagged reef. Marcus pressed toward the ruined lighthouse where Ileana's harp was said to hang upon a beam. He paused at the threshold as the first bolt of lightning cast the cove in stark white light. With it came a single trembling note, pure as glass. He stepped inside the ruin. The harp sat on an overturned keg, rain streaming through collapsed roof. Its silver strings vibrated with each thunderclap. Marcus set down his pack and listened as the storm harp played. An aria of wind-wrenched sorrow, notes rising like a heart in pain, falling like tears into the sea. Marcus drew a small journal and sketched the harp's strings, scribbling the intervals and cadences as they rang out. Each chord carried the weight of Ileana's grief and the fury of the tempest. Lightning brightened the chamber. Thunder echoed his chest. Marcus's fingers traced the air as though playing the melody, committing it to memory. The harp's song changed with each blast of wind, a minor lament when rain drummed, a bold crescendo as waves slammed the rocks, a soft, haunting lull when the storm paused. Marcus's heart ached with each phrase, but he feared the tide might rise, or the ruins collapse. With trembling hands, he closed the journal and fled back up the cliff path, the harp's final, lingering chord ringing in his ears. Morning found Marcus at Brenner's hearth, dripping wet and white-faced. He placed the journal before the old man. Brenner unfolded the pages, eyes widening as he read Marcus's phrasings and notations. He reached the last page, blank except for a single line. "And when the last bolt falls, the heart shall yield its song." Brenner rose and fetched from a locked chest an ivory tuning fork carved with moon glyphs, the same that once rang alongside the storm harp. In the flickering hearthlight, he struck the fork, sending a soft hum through the workshop. The sound matched the sorrowful timbre of the harp's final note. Brenner, voice thick with emotion, "You have heard its music. Few can notate the storm harp's song without being claimed by it. You must choose. Bind the tune to your soul and carry its weight, or let it slip forever into memory's mist." Marcus's chest tightened. He could not abandon the melody. It sang of love beyond loss, of storms weathered, of hope reborn with the dawn. He took the tuning fork. Brenner applied its note to a harp Marcus had finished days before, a small instrument of willow and spruce. Marcus plucked the corresponding strings. The melody took shape, trembling at first, then steady as the sea's last sigh. He worked through the night, weaving Brenner's ancient techniques with his own memory of the cold harp on the cliff. When dawn's pink light touched the workshop, Marcus played the completed piece for Brenner. Each note rang clear and true, a fragile echo of the storm harp's cry. Brenner, tears in his eyes, "You have bound the storm's heart to wood and wire. Now you carry its gift and its burden." Years passed. Marcus Calloway became master harpist of Elwyn Cove. On storm-tossed nights, he climbed the cliff path to the ruined lighthouse, where he performed the storm harp's melody on his own crafted harp. As he played, the wind softened, the thunder bowed its head, and the sea held its roar, lulled by the haunting echo of hope amid despair. Villagers gathered below, lanterns swaying in gentle breeze, faces upturned in reverence. Marcus's music healed old wounds. Fishermen safe through rough nights, widows at peace with their grief, children lulled to sleep by lullabies of silver rain. To this day, Marcus's descendants carry the melody in their blood, guardians of the storm harp's legacy. The harp itself remains in Brynner's workshop, silent until the next tempest calls. And on distant shores, when thunder rolls and waves batter the coast, some say they still hear faint willowwood chords riding the wind, reminders that even the fiercest storm can be soothed by the song of the heart. Eleora Trent was a scholar of temporal prodigies, drawn to the pale glass by rumors of its uncanny visions. She arrived in Brightford on the eve of the harvest moon, journal in hand and heart aflutter with anticipation. Her first night, lantern aglow, she stood upon the riverbank, scanning the liquid mirror. "I am Eleora Trent of Westvale University," she whispered. "Grant me a glimpse of tomorrow's sun." The water rippled, then stilled. In its depths, Eleora saw herself, years older, gray at the temples, standing victorious before a lecture hall, her eyes alight with discovery. The image shimmered, then faded. Jolted back to the present, she gasped. Was this tomorrow's truth, or a path never taken? She tucked the vision away, determined to learn more. At dawn, Eleora sought out Finian Rourke, Brightford's weathered fisherman, known for skirting the pale glass's reach. He found her on the quay, cataloging river sketches. Finian, voice thick with sea salt. "You saw it, didn't you? The river doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole truth. It shows what will be if the world stays as it is." Eleora, "Then the future is mutable." Finian, "Aye, but knowing tomorrow can drive a mind mad, trying to force fate. Best you tread lightly." Eleora pressed him. "What have you seen?" Finian's gaze darkened. He spoke of a flood, the Vale's crops drowning beneath ice-packed waters, a vision that came when he sought the river in the heart of winter. Finian, "I'd change nothing. Didn't dare. Some futures want to be born." Hearing of Eleora's quest, the villagers escorted her to Mira Lysewell, an aged seer who lived in the Willow Glen. Mira's eyes, pale as moonstone, regarded Eleora with knowing calm. "Mira, the river shows possibilities, but its gift comes at a price. Your heart will weigh the vision against your hope, and if you try to bend the river's fate, your spirit shall break." Eleora nodded, unsettled. Mira placed a gnarled hand upon her shoulder. "Mira, seek not to change but to understand, then decide what must be faced." As autumn waned, Eleora made daily pilgrimages. At the rapids, where silver waters thrashed against stone, she peered into the frothing pool. The river refused to grant a future. Yet when the moonlight shone directly upon her eyes, visions came, a plague of night blight creeping across the vale, turning flesh to pale husks under moon's kiss. Shaken, Eleora fled. Could such horror be prevented? Or was the river's mirror merely a warning of a path some might unwittingly walk? News arrived of a sinister illness in neighboring Embermarch, symptoms of night blight. Brightford's council convened. Mobs demanded the river's banishment, burying its banks, damming its flow, believing the water to curse them. Finian rose in opposition. "Finian, the river's not the curse, it's our mirror. If we drown the pale glass, we blind ourselves to the future's warning." Eleora stood beside him. Drawing upon her visions, she pleaded, "Eleora, we can prepare, fortify our cabins, purge the sick before they spread it, glean cures from the oldest texts." Her words swayed the council. They agreed to heed the river's warning, not erase it. Under Eleora's guidance, villagers organized night watches guarded by torches steeped in silver husk tincture, an herbal antidote discovered in ancient scrolls. Loom's Edge Infirmary was readied with purified water drawn from hidden springs beyond the vale. When night blight reached Brightford's outskirts, It crashed against their barricades of resolve and remedy. Sick were quarantined. Caregivers clad in treated cloaks. Healing baths bathed victims in twilight's dew. Each day, Eleora returned to the pale glass, seeking fresh glimpses, tides of hope where others saw only ruin. By midwinter, the vale's frost-silver birches shivered in cold gusts, but the illness was contained. Life persisted. Children laughed in snowdrifts, hearths crackled with warmth. The river's waters ran clear once more, offering visions of a brighter dawn. At the harvest moon's return, villagers gathered by the pale glass. Eleora looked once more into the river's mirrored surface. "I am Eleora Trent," she whispered, recalling her first plea. The reflection shimmered, her hair ungrayed, standing before a new generation of students, now herself teaching the wisdom of the river's warnings. She smiled, knowing some futures are forged by those who heed the mirror's truth. Years later, Eleora's name echoes in Brightford's histories as the sage of tomorrow's glass. The pale glass remains untamed, its banks ringed by lanterns of warning, its waters offering visions to those bold enough to ask. And each harvest moon night, villagers and scholars alike stand by the river, whispering, "Show us our path, O pale glass, that we might walk tomorrow's dawn in light, not in shadows of what might have been." Thus the river flows on, reflecting futures yet born, guiding hearts willing to learn from its timeless glass. Maribel Westwood was an antiquarian drawn to the uncanny. She purchased Gravel Hall at auction, its vaults rumored to hold wonders, and arrived on a mist-shrouded morning. The estate stood silent, its windows black like sunken eyes. In the servant's staircase, she found the attic key and climbed through layers of dust to the strangest room. Walls hung with fading tapestries, and in its center, on a carved oak stand, rested the vanished mirror. Maribel approached, heart racing. Its frame was etched with roses and thorn-like runes. "Behold thyself and remain." She wiped the glass with her sleeve. Her reflection shimmered and then changed. She saw herself in an opulent parlor, dressed in silken gowns, her hair woven with pearls. Mesmerized, she stepped closer, fingers grazing the surface, and vanished. At dusk, Maribel's absence alarmed the local caretaker, Rowan Collis. He searched the attic, finding only the mirror's empty stand. On the floor lay her notebook, open to the last words she wrote. "The mirror promises beauty beyond time. I must see more." A chill crept through him as he recalled the legends. Rowan tested the mirror once, just a glance, and saw himself at a distant battlefield, sword raised in triumph. He forced his gaze down, threw a cloth over the glass, and fled the hall, vowing to rescue Maribel. Rowan enlisted the help of Cassandra Hale, a scholar of arcane lore. That night, beneath a full moon, they returned to the attic. Cassandra produced a silver dagger inscribed with binding runes. "Cassandra, we can open a small breach in the mirror, enough to pull Maribel through. But beware, the glass realm mirrors desire. We must not be tempted by its lures." Rowan nodded. Cassandra traced a rune circle around the mirror, then stabbed the dagger's tip into the glass. A crack spread, like lightning caught in silver. A gust of cold wind rushed through the breach, and Rowan heard Maribel's voice echo, soft, distant, insistent. "Rowan, free me!" Cassandra grabbed his arm. "Don't step too close," she warned, but Rowan could not resist. He leaned forward and felt the glass's surface swallow him like quicksilver. Rowan fell through a swirl of mist into an opulent parlor. Marble floors, velvet drapes, flickering crystal chandeliers. Maribel reclined on a silken divan, her face luminous with joy. "Maribel, you came. It showed me my dream life, and I stayed." Rowan embraced her, relief flooding him. Yet as he pulled her close, He noticed other figures in the shadows, men and women in fine attire, their eyes glassy and unseeing. Their lips moved in silent conversations. From outside came a gentle chime, like a familiar bell. Maribel stood. "That's the mirror's promise calling me," she said, stepping toward a gilded doorway lined with mirrors. Rowan lunged to stop her, but she vanished through the arch, drawn onward. Rowan pursued her through a labyrinth of mirrored corridors. Each mirror reflected a different future. Cassandra as empress of a jeweled court, himself as a heroic general. Maribel crowned, wearing an endless adoration. The corridors twisted, disorienting him. With each false reflection, he felt temptation tighten around his heart. He stumbled before a mirror showing Cassandra in peril, drowned beneath ink-black waves. His heart seized with dread. Was she trapped beyond the breach? Summoning courage, he shattered the mirror with the dagger's pommel. The glass exploded, awakening row upon row of fallen dreamers as they screamed into reality. Rowan covered his ears, pressing forward. At last, Rowan reached the glass chamber, a domed room lined completely with mirrors. In its center stood Maribel before an immense gilded mirror. She ran her fingers over its surface, eyes shining. "Maribel, this is my destiny, Ro. Here I am, cherished forever." Rowan, "Maribel, these are lies born of desire. The mirror imprisons you." She recoiled at his words. The mirrors around them rippled, and their own reflections twisted into nightmare forms. Rowan as a chained prisoner, Maribel as an anguished queen. Cassandra appeared behind Rowan, voice echoing. "Cassandra. Rowan, now! Call her name. Draw her away." Rowan reached for Maribel's hand. She hesitated, longing warring with reality. He said softly, "Maribel, remember who you are." The mirrors shuddered. Maribel's eyes cleared. Tears fell as she whispered Rowan's name. She turned and took his hand. The mirrors cracked, spiderwebbing toward the ceiling. Rowan and Maribel fled as the chamber collapsed in shards of silver. Cassandra caught them at the breach. Together they stepped back through the crack in the attic mirror. The breach sealed behind them with a final chime, like a distant sigh. Maribel sank to her knees, trembling. Rowan knelt at her side, pulling her into his arms. Cassandra extinguished the binding runes. The attic fell silent once more. "Cassandra, the mirror will lie still again, until the next time." "Maribel, never shall I be tempted again, but we must hide it, or destroy it." Gravel Hall's mirror was sealed in stone, locked behind wards of iron and silver, its frame wrapped in veils of dusk-woven cloth. Rowan and Maribel left Dunswith, carrying only memories of love in the perils of vanity. Cassandra returned to her studies, teaching scholars the dangers of coveting impossible futures. But on moonlit nights, when the wind stirs the attic's latch, some claim they hear the faintest whisper of reflected laughter, the echo of glass meeting glass. Reminders that some mirrors do not merely reflect, but reach out, seeking to bind the heart of any who look too deeply into their haunted depths. The evening Kayla Rowe arrived, the town was in mid-chant. Marcus Levenhart, Dorothea Wren, Aldrich Greystone. Kayla felt their names echo within her, though she had never known them. She had come seeking her sister, lost years ago in the Vale's mists, but found herself drawn instead to the square's hush. A counselor approached, robes of iron blue. "Newcomer, do you know why we remember only the dead?" Kayla shook her head. I seek only my sister." He studied her with empty gray eyes. "Then learn our way, or forget all else." Kayla was guided to the parish house, where she was given a simple chamber and told to report at dawn. That morning she rose to the silent toll. The townsfolk spilled into the square. Each citizen carried a slip of parchment, a single name they must submit before dusk's bell. No one spoke of their own lives. Their lips moved only for the dead. Kayla watched as elderly Mr. Harrow, eyes rimmed red, approached the obelisk and read, "My son, Felix Harrow." A flicker of memory, Felix's laughter, shone in the father's eyes, then faded. Kayla realized the townsfolk reclaimed memories of the dead, even as their own past vanished. She asked the counselor, Marinthula, what becomes of the living's memories? Marin's face tightened. We are bound to remember only what has ceased to breathe. To recall the living is sacrilege. Our burden is to honor the gone. As days passed, Kayla's own memories blurred, her sister's face a shifting haze. She tried to talk of her hopes, her childhood, but found her words lost. Instead, she began to write every memory before dawn, preserving them on scraps of cloth hidden beneath her mattress. One night, Kayla discovered a secret alley behind the chapel, where a handful of townsfolk gathered in hushed tones. Among them were Marin and the blacksmith's wife Tilda. They formed a circle, sharing names of people still among them. Kayla watched in awe as they breathed life into each other's memories of laughter, sorrow, and hope. Then wept as the assembly dissolved when the vesper bell rang, the obelisk's names reclaiming their tongues. Beneath their tears, Kayla heard a new name on the wind, her sister's. Marin led Kayla to a hidden door in the church crypt. Beyond lay the vault of lost voices, dozens of shelves stacked with jars of whispered memories. Each jar held a soul's recollection of the living, songs, laughter, a mother's lullaby, sealed away to protect the town's law. There are those, said Marin, her voice trembling, who would steal these to remember forever, and thus break the balance. She handed Kayla a parchment. It bore one name in Kayla's hand, her sister's. That jar contains your sister's memory of life. If you release it, you become fugitive, doomed to be erased when the bell next tolls. Kayla's heart pounded. I must have her back. Marin's face was sorrowful. Know that every memory freed steals from a dead soul. The more you remember, the more they are forgotten. Kayla waited until the eve of All Souls, the night when the obelisk listed every death ever. Lanterns dotted the square like distant stars. She returned to the vault, jar in trembling hand. She could hear the memory stirring, her sister's laughter as a child, their shared lullaby in the moonlight. Tears blurred her vision. She raised her knife to break the seal, but paused. The jar's glass trembled with the weight of all memories it held. She thought of the dead whose recollections she would consume, and of the living whose lives she would restore. With a cry, she shattered the glass. A wave of sound, laughter, tears, music, roared through the vault, tearing at the seals of every jar. Kayla stumbled back as memories poured into the air like mist. She felt her own past crystallize, her mother's face, her father's handshake, her sister's embrace. Then darkness. When Kayla awoke, she lay in the church nave, sunlight pouring through stained glass. The bell had tolled once at dawn, but the square lay empty. The obelisk stood silent, its names now unreadable. The townsfolk had vanished. Marin emerged, eyes soft. You freed us all, living and dead. The balance is broken, but now you hold the memories for every soul who walks these streets. One by one, the villagers returned, blinking at the sun. They looked to Kayla, confusion and gratitude mingling in their faces. She handed each a scrap of cloth, now imbued with their own forgotten memories. A daughter's smile, a neighbor's kindness, a first friendship. As they read and wept, the town of Evermorn awakened to its own life. Years later, Kayla became the keeper of memory for the newly renamed Dawnrest, formerly Evermorn. She established the archive of living voices, where every citizen's memories, past and future, were recorded in journals and song. The obelisk was moved to the center of a joyous square, its blank stones a reminder not of death, but of memory's power to unite living and dead. No longer did the town remember only the departed. Instead, each dawn, children learned every name in the archive and added their own. And each dusk, villagers gathered to share stories of love, loss, triumph, and hope, ensuring that no memory of the living or the dead ever faded into silence again. Aurora Vale was a celebrated violinist who had played for kings and commoners alike. Yet in recent months, she had lost her joy for music. Every note she coaxed from her cherished Stradivarius felt hollow, void of emotion. Hearing whispers of the dirge violin's power, she sought the dark instrument, believing that if she could conquer its despairing melody, she might reignite her own passion. On a fog-choked evening, Aurora arrived at Blackwood and Son. The bell above the door tinkled, and an old man emerged from the shadows, the proprietor, Elias Blackwood. Elias, voice low as falling leaves. So you seek the dirge violin. Beware, it does not play music, it plays hearts. Aurora, I have lost my music. If despair can teach me its depths, I will rise anew. Elias's eyes glinted with sorrow. He unlocked the case. The violin's ebony surface gleamed like starlit water. Aurora's breath caught as she raised the bow. In the muted light of the shop, Aurora drew her bow across the dirge violin's strings. A single note emerged, soft, subtly out of tune, like a cry half remembered. Aurora faltered as a wave of anguish washed through her. Memories of loss long buried, her mother's lonely goodbye, a childhood friend's laughter swallowed by time. She continued, each bow stroke weaving a tapestry of sorrow, regrets, unspoken apologies, nights spent weeping beneath satin sheets. Aurora felt the music claim her soul, drawing tears she could not stem. When the final note faded, the shop lay silent. Aurora's hands trembled, her eyes glistened. She looked at Elias. Aurora, it shows me my pain. Elias, yet that is only the beginning. Night after night, Aurora returned to the shop. Each time she played deeper chords, melodies that summoned darker despair, nocturne of forgotten dreamers, stirring visions of ambitions left to rot, elegy of solitude, conjuring isolation even among crowds, requiem of shattered vows, wrenching confessions of promises broken. With every performance, Aurora felt her own life vanish. Laughter faded, warmth drained from her touch, color bled from her world. The dirge violin revealed despair in all its forms, unhealed wounds, hidden fears, guilt unatoned. Yet she could not stop. She believed that by mastering the violin's lament, she would transmute sorrow into art, only to find herself lost deeper in its abyss. Elias warned her, the dirge violin demands sacrifice. To claim its final melody, you must give it your own soul's light. But Aurora, obsessed, answered only by raising the bow. One storm-racked night, as thunder shook the shop's windows, Aurora played the dirge's ultimate composition. The dirge of dusk fell, a ceaseless melody of despair so profound that the candle flames wept black smoke. Each note cracked open her heart. Hear the cry of every sorrow. Let the night consume the morrow. As she played the final chord, Aurora felt her spirit unravel. The violin's weeping strings sucked away her music, leaving silence so vast it ate the world. When dawn's gray light filtered through the shutters, Aurora lay collapsed at the workbench. The dirge violin rested silently beside her. Elias knelt and touched her brow, cold as marble. Elias, you have played the dirge of Duskfell. Now you stand between despair and oblivion. Aurora, voice a whisper. Have I learned its secret? Elias, yes, that sorrow once embraced can create beauty beyond song. yet at the cost of all else. Aurora sat, hollow-eyed. She had mastered the dirge, but lost her own music forever. Aurora left Raven's Hollow at first light, disappearing into the mist. Some say she wanders the world, playing silence for those who have lost too much. In her stead, Elias locked the dirge violin in its case, recovering the padlock inscribed, "To play the dirge is to play at life's cost. Beware the melody you cannot unhear." And so the violin waits in Blackwood and Son violin makers, its ebony wood gleaming like a midnight tear, ready for the next virtuoso bold enough to summon melodies of despair. Isabel Graves was a cartographer of the mind, mapping uncharted spaces of memory and emotion in her journals. By day, she sketched real coastlines. By night, she chronicled dreams, gardens of crystal roses, labyrinths of silver fog, whirlpools of yearning. Yet for months she had drifted through restless nights, haunted by a recurring vision of a ship on silent waters. When the Nova Festival came, a celebration of new moons and new dreams, Isabel followed others to the Blackwater docks. As lanterns swung and laughter rose, the tide of sleep washed over the revelers. Isabel lingered at the quay's edge, pen in hand, as the world blurred and starlight pooled. There, at the very spot she had drawn in her sketchbook, the aurora emerged from the misty ether. Its lanterns burned soft and beckoning. Isabel's heart thundered. The dream ship had come. No plank appeared to bridge reality and dream, yet with a single step, Isabel found herself on the Aurora's polished deck. The Dreamweaver captain, tall, silver-haired, eyes like molten starlight, greeted her. "Captain Merriam, welcome, dream traveler. Our course runs through your heart's hidden seas. Will you sail?" Isabel's voice trembled. "Yes, I need to find something lost." Marion inclined his head. "Then hold fast to your purpose. Beyond the waking shore lie wonders and dangers woven by every sleeping soul." As the dream ship drifted away from reality's edge, the world below vanished in a swirl of moonlit mist. Morning sun never reached the Aurora's deck. Instead, the skies shifted with hues, amber at dawn, violet at dusk, according to the collective dreams of the passengers. Isabel watched islands rise from glassy seas, the Isle of First Love, where cherry blossom lanes reenacted tender confessions. The Island of Regret, its shores lined with broken promises, turned to driftwood. She wandered the deck, sketchbook in hand, mapping each ethereal land. Fellow dreamers joined her, an orphan reclaiming childhood joys, a soldier revisiting comrades lost, a widow dancing with echoes of her youth. Each found healing in these realms of remembrance. Yet Isabel sought the final isle spoken of in her recurring dream, the lighthouse of lost tomorrows, where unfulfilled hopes spun like lanterns in the fog. As the Aurora neared the lighthouse's waters, storm clouds gathered on the dream sea, a tempest of fear and doubt, conjured by passengers' buried terrors. Waves of memory darkness crashed against the hull. The Dreamweavers struggled to guide the ship through narrowing channels of half-formed nightmares, shadows whispering of failure and despair. Isabel felt her own fears swell, the thought that her maps of the mind were meaningless, that her quest was folly. She retreated to the rail, clutching the moonwood baluster. Captain Marion appeared beside her, calm in the maelstrom. "To weather nightmares, one must acknowledge them," he said. "Speak your fear." Isabel closed her eyes. "I fear I've wasted my gift, drawing memories for no one's healing." Her voice cracked. A wave of darkness broke against the deck, then receded. The storm's howl grew softer. Marion smiled. "Honesty guides us. The lighthouse awaits." At the storm's heart lay a solitary granite tower, its beacon unlit. Isabel stepped ashore as other dreamers followed, each clutching tokens of their journey. Inside the spiral stairs of the lighthouse, they found alcoves where floating lanterns hovered, each representing a lost dream. Isabel lit her sketchbook's single midnight blue page with a brass lantern and set it among the others. Her token glowed, releasing a wisp of light that coalesced in the tower's lantern cup. Above, the beacon of lost tomorrows ignited in a radiant flare, casting hope across the dream sea. Each passenger watched their lanterns ascent with renewed purpose. The orphan would become a mentor, the soldier a peacemaker, the widow an artist of joy. Isabel felt her own spirit soar. Her maps of memory would guide others to healing shores. The Aurora's sails caught a gentle breeze, guiding the ship back to the waking world's harbor. At the Blackwater docks, Isabel stepped ashore as dawn's first light crept along real cobbles. The dream ship vanished into mist, leaving only the echo of its bell, soft as a heartbeat. Isabel's sketchbook now bore a new map, a chart of the Isles of Memory and the lighthouse of lost tomorrows, annotated with lessons gleaned in dreams. She closed the book and looked at the sleeping town waking around her. In the years that followed, Isabel published The Atlas of the Mind, a collection of illustrated dream maps that guided readers through their own inner seas. People carried her atlas to clinics and workshops, using it to navigate grief, rekindle hope, and chart new paths forward. On certain clear nights when the moon was full and the world felt on the brink of slumber, villagers near the harbor swore they saw sails of star mist on the horizon and heard the Aurora's soft bell. Isabel would smile, pen in hand, knowing that the dream ship sailed ever onward, bringing the living through dreams to brighter morrows yet unseen. Lucian's study was silent, but for the clock's ticking and the whisper of turning pages. On the desk lay the blank-turned written manuscript. He read. Lucian Drake traced the book's leather cover with trembling fingers. It felt alive, warm as a beating heart. As he read, the candle flickered low, and shadows twisted in the corners of the room. The words felt like memory. Lucian's pulse spiked. He looked down at his cuff, his name embroidered upon it in the university's crest, and realized the book knew him. When he turned the page, the next chapter had appeared. He could not stop himself. He read on. Lucian closed the book and exhaled. Yet his eyes fell back upon the next blank page. Where letters formed, he opened it again. As days passed, Lucien watched the book compose itself. Descriptions of his past lectures, the faces of students, the portrait of his late wife hanging in his study. Each time he tried to close it, the virgin page drew his gaze, inscribing itself with uncanny speed. He rose at dawn, haunted by phrases he had never spoken, but now remembered. He recognized the words as thoughts he had never voiced. With dawning horror, Lucian realized the book wrote not only its own story, but shaped his mind, planting memories not his own. Within a fortnight, Lucian had lost track of where his life ended and the book's narrative began. Each morning he awoke reciting lines the manuscript commanded. Each night he scribbled in his own journal, only to find the book had stolen his pen's ink, replacing it with silver script. Desperate, Lucian sought counsel from Dr. Ilara Finch, Everwood's archivist and adept in arcane tomes. In the dusty vault, he showed her the manuscript. Ilara. These marginal notes, see how they shift? They warn of an ending that demands sacrifice. On the edges, scrawled in crimson that pulsed like blood, were words Lucian had never written. Beware the final chapter, it is written in flesh. Ilara traced her fingers over the warning. The book thrives on life. To conclude its tale, it needs a final offering. We must break its narrative loop. They devised a plan to sever the manuscript's power by reading it backward, thus inverting its control. But as they turned to begin, the candle's flame twisted into a shape of a quill, and the page before them filled. They could not stop reading. That night, Lucian and Ilara sat in the candle-dim study. each opened at the final chapter, blank still, but humming with potential. Alara began to read the book in reverse, from the last word Lucien had written in his journal to the first line on the title page. As she spoke each word backward, the manuscript shivered. Ninrael fo nichtina ot sagrevo revi range. Her voice quavered, but the letters morphed into sense. Hanar, Asik, ever overgains anything of learning. The text broke apart, letters swirling like motes of dust. Lucien reached to close the cover, but his fingers passed through, as though the book were liquid. As dawn's first gray light crept through the windows, the room trembled. The book's pages raced leaf by leaf, fashioning an ending of its own. To break the cycle, one must offer the final stroke of the pen, the hand that began the tale. Only the reader can end the book. Lucien recognized himself as the reader, and so he did what he must. With trembling hand, he stabbed the manuscript's pages with his fountain pen, spilling his own blood onto the leather cover. The book groaned, the silver script cracking, as if in pain. Alara helped him hold the pen steady. Lucien wrote a single line in his own hand across the final page. Here ends the Book of Lives at the cost of one soul's truth. The moment he set pen down, the manuscript seized his wrist with cool binding light. Pain shot through Lucien's arm, but the book paused its pulse of power. The silver letters on the pages turned black, then smudged. When Lucien awoke, he lay on the study floor. The book closed at his side. A single drip of blood marked the cover. Alara knelt beside him, eyes brimming. Alara, you saved us, but at great price. The book can no longer write itself. Its voice is stilled. Lucien rose unsteadily. He felt empty, as though every memory the book had plucked was now restored to him. He touched his arm. Only a faint scar remained. Years later, Lucien became custodian of the silent volume, the final book of lives, housed in Everwood's vault, chained against midnight's hush. The university's scholars debated whether the manuscript's self-writing power was lost forever or lay dormant, awaiting another reader's blood. Lucien, older and wiser, published his own book. On Borders of Story and Life, the Reader's Sacrifice. He taught that stories shape us, and that ultimate power demands ultimate price. And each night, when the moon was full, he returned to gaze upon the silent volume, touching its scarred cover and remembering, every tale must end, even the one that writes itself. Marisol Gray arrived on a frost-bitten afternoon, her breath steaming in the courtyard air. The town council had appointed her caretaker of Hawthorne House, an act of last resort after every previous keeper fled in terror. Armed with gloves, fresh batteries, and skeptical resolve, she unlocked the wrought iron gate and stepped inside. The moment her boot creaked on the threshold, the silence shifted. The front door's ancient hinges sighed as though greeting her. She carried her lantern into the entry hall, its glow revealing faded wallpaper and a grand staircase that curled upward into shadow. On the wall, a dusty frame held a portrait of the original owners, their stern faces set in permanent watchfulness. Marisol set down her suitcase. "I'm here to catalog and protect," she told the silent walls, "no matter what." That first night, Marisol settled into the guest suite on the ground floor. She burned sage, locked the door, and lay awake listening. At midnight, she heard it, footsteps padding on creaking floorboards above, slow, deliberate, then fading. She sat up, heart pounding. "Hello?" she called into the dark. Only the hush answered. She grabbed her lantern and climbed the stairs. On the landing, she found nothing but the cold draft from a broken window. Yet on the polished banister, she saw muddy footprints in her size. Her lantern's tremor cast their shadows across the walls, elongated and shifting as though alive. Marisol cleaned the marks, but at dawn they reappeared exactly as before. Determined to understand, Marisol explored each room by daylight. In the sitting room, the fireplace's mantle bore gouges like fingernail marks. The leather chair, perfectly preserved, still held the imprint of a visitor's shape. On the library shelves, a single volume lay open, its page marked not by a bookmark, but by a child's tear smear. She turned to the walls, running her hand over the faded damask. As she pressed, soft murmurs filled her mind, fragments of conversation. "I never meant to. If she finds out, to promise me you'll stay." Marisol staggered back. The house was speaking, a chorus of memories trapped in plaster and stone. In the attic, she discovered the truth. Behind a rotting floorboard lay a leather-bound journal. Its entries chronicled Hawthorne House's history. 1842. Built by Lord Hawthorne, a collector of curiosities. 1860. Daughter Eliza vanished from a masked ball, never found. 1898. Lord Hawthorne died by his own hand in the library, leaving a bloodstain on the rug. 1923. The last caretaker fled, speaking of children's laughter echoing at night. The final entry, dated last year, read simply, "I can't leave." The house sang my name. Marisol closed the journal, resolve hardening. She realized, to free herself, she must honor each trapped memory. That evening, Marisol set candles along the grand hallway, each representing a memory she intended to acknowledge. Eliza's disappearance. In the ballroom's mirrors, Marisol spoke softly, "Eliza Hawthorne, you are not forgotten." The mirrors rippled as though nodding. Lord Hawthorne's despair. In the library, she laid a fresh rose atop his study desk. "Your sorrow anchored you here. May you find peace." The fireplace crackled, though untouched. The caretaker's flight. In her own room, Marisol placed the old caretaker's key on her bedside table. "Your fear was real. Your story matters." The lock on her door clicked, as though someone turned it back into place. With each ritual, the house sighed in relief. Floorboards softened, walls warmed, the lantern's flame steadied. Yet when Marisol retreated to bed, the footsteps returned, this time accompanied by a child's giggle. At midnight, Marisol rose and followed the laughter up the stairs to the attic. There she found not the playful spirit she expected, but the sorrowful shade of a girl in a lace dress, Eliza's image, translucent and trembling. "Eliza," voice echoing. I'm lost." Marisol knelt. "You are remembered, Eliza. I've spoken your name, heard your story." The specter's tears glistened in the lantern's glow. "Thank you," she whispered, then dissolved into motes of golden dust that drifted through the rafters. The house trembled, and the attic's hatch flew open to the night air. A breeze carried away the dust, and with it the last echo of Eliza's sorrow. When dawn's first light entered Hawthorne House, its rooms felt different, lighter, as if tension had drained. Marisol walked the halls, no muddy prints, no whispered voices, only the soft hum of morning. She reopened the journal. The final entry had changed. Now it read, "I can leave. The house remembers, but no longer binds." Marisol closed the book and smiled. Hawthorne House had freed its memories, and in turn, freed her. Marisol remained as caretaker, opening Hawthorne House to visitors wishing to learn its history. Each guest received a guided tour through the ballroom of vanished dance steps, the library of whispered regrets, and the attic where lost children played. Before departing, each visitor spoke a memory into the house, honoring someone forgotten in their own lives. And every night, the walls listened, remembering the living and the dead alike. Thus, Hawthorne House stood at Raven's Hollow's edge, not a prison of echoes, but a sanctuary of remembrance, where no memory faded unwitnessed, and every visitor left knowing their story too would be honored by the house that remembered.